Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to thank my dear friend and this talented writer, Patricia Tenorio, for the invitation to talk a little bit about my literary project here in the Frankfurt Fair. Thank you, Patricia. Well, my literary project today comes down to a few short stories published in magazines, 2 short story books, and a book in progress. I wrote my first story when I was 29. Until then, I wrote just chronicles. Today, I'm 43. The fact is, it was posting chronicles on a blog that, for the first time, I noticed the presence of the reader. This is the blog. I had 17 followers. This short story called The Assessor, o Assessor, was one of my first short stories I wrote. This entity, the reader, manifested itself through the comments. So the responsibility was born in me to deliver to them with some frequency the text as a product. But I'm talking about the chronicles. But interesting facts didn't always happen so often in my life. And I didn't always want to express an opinion. This is how, in my blog, the chronicles were turning into fictions. And the readers gradually stopped dissociation, the story I was telling, with my personal life. It gave me more freedom to invent. The shift from chronicles to fiction, therefore, led me to want to understand how to write a short story. That is, I want to learn the technique. I started studying creative writing manuals, such as The Art of Fiction by John Gardner, where I learned how to build the fictional dream. To Read Like a Writer by Francine Prose, who better taught me how to write fictional dialogue. I believe it was reading master authors of the short story that helped me the most to understand the inner workings of this kind of brief narrative. For instance, the next slide. Julio Cortázar's Tales of Impact. Next slide. Catherine Mansfield's Tales of Atmosphere. Hemingway's Cipher Tales. Delícia Fagundes Tellez' Tales of Mystery. It took me longer to update my blog, of course. Fiction required the understanding and application of a different technique. So I signed up for a literary workshop. It was there that, studying, writing, and receiving criticism, I realized that writing a short story took time. It was no longer possible to post a new text every week, even every month, and that was the end of my blog. Today I wonder why it took me so long to start writing fiction. Fear of failing, fear of criticism, another kind of fear. I must say that at the age of 30, I had a daughter. A father must stay alive to raise his child. It is instinctive. And if the fear of death drives away lesser fears, it can be liberating. The abiding awareness of death is what led me to fulfill my desire to write fiction. I started writing fiction almost every day, and I used to think that everything I wrote was good. But in 2010, my workshop teacher made me understand that I was wrong. My short stories still needed a better treatment. So I discard them, forget them, or just leave a while waiting for a new look. Some tales I wrote at the time won awards, but others I just forgot. The fear of failure no longer paralyzed me. In fact, this fear faded into the routine of writing. 2 years later, in 2012, I joined the master degree in creative writing at PUC-RS. PUC-RS, Patricia said about. Yes. At university, I had to think of something that, until then, was only a vague idea: to write a book. Writing a book was not just about putting together the short stories already written, but rather a process that encompassed planning, writing, and reflection. a reflection on my themes and on technique. Childhood is a theme that fascinates me. So almost all of the short stories in my first book talk about it. My first book, The Love We Don't Feel and Other Tales. O Amor Que Não Sentimos e Outros Contos em Português. About the writing of this book, I remember that a professor said that of the 10 short stories I showed him, only 2 had what he called drama. That was their problem, the lack of drama. I don't know if, in fact, I came to understand what he meant. However, today I have this conclusion. Those 8 tales want to talk about family conflicts. But that fiction did not confront the human truth I wanted to show. So, did I still run away? I realized that writing fiction, at least the fiction I want to write, was also an act of courage to face not the other, but oneself. Writing is technical, but above all, an intimate effort to bring to light our inner ghosts and shape them with the word. Writing could never be a subterfuge to hide or even ignore these ghosts. In this way, writing can be a constant dismantling of the image we built of ourselves. So when I joined the doctorate degree in creative writing, I decided to delve into writing about memory. The memory of a certain space, the border between Brazil and Uruguay. And because it was the place where I was born, the city of Santa Vitória do Palmar, it was also my personal memory. This is the space on the map, the extreme south of Brazil. In this new book, I tried to construct characters that were somehow the metaphor for the place where they live. A secluded, lonely place squeezed between the Atlantic Ocean and 2 large lagoons, a place forgotten by economic and social progress. It took me 5 years to write my second book, Topographies of Solitude. This is the cover of the book. It was published in 2022 by Zook Publishing House. At the beginning of this second process, I suffered a creative block. As an unlocking exercise, I began to write down my memories in a notebook. Here it is, the first page of my notebook. I started in 2017. Writing this notebook, I didn't care about the form. I just wrote, day after day. I started with the first memory of myself and continued filling out the notebook, evoking past images like this. At the age of 3, I used to visit my great-grandfather. Once, he took off the denture and on the rosacea of the artificial gum, showed me a small lettuce leaf. That fascinated me. But on the other visits, although the old man kept showing the denture, I never saw the lettuce leaf again. Was that sadness my first feeling about never again? Another unlocking exercise was the collages. I would gather clippings from the sketch sheets, copy of family photograph, and photograph of my daily life. In next image, for example, I make a mosaic of family portraits. And the other one, a mosaic of my childhood house in Santa Vitória do Palmar, that city. The creative process of my second book, therefore, mixes memorialistic writing, the memory notebook, an exercise of visual arts, the collage, and fictional writing, the short stories. There were 3 processes within another, larger one, that fed each other and did not obey a chronological order or a method. In this process of writing, I realized that one of the vectors of my creative process is the image. The words then must be chosen according to their ability to best form a picture in the reader's fictional dreams. Remember the art of fiction of John Gardner, the fictional dream, how to build a picture in the dream of in the reader's dream. I wonder if we may call this an exercise of aesthetic handcraft, and if that's why I call this lecture Handcrafted Words. From the experience with image construction during the writing of my second book came the desire to write a third book. In this new process, I work the dialogue between textile image, the handcrafted words, and at least 3 types of image. 1, the dream image. So I ask myself, what story does this occasional dream suggest me? 2, the pictorial image. What story this picture, for instance, by David Hockney, may suggest? And 3, the next smiles. And the photograph image, like this. What story this photo by Boris Kossoy, called The Viaduct, may suggest? My third book working title is The Steepest Viaduct in the World. O viaduto mais íngreme do mundo, in Portuguese. The title is from a story I published in the Jornal Rascunho, a Brazilian literary journal. When I have a dream suggested of a story, I used to describe it in a notebook. I end up selecting dreams that somehow speak of a latent desire. When I saw this picture on TV, I realized that if I included it in a dream description, I could figure out a tale. So the tale, the steepest viaduct in the world, uses a dream I had, and this photo. The first difficulty of the narrator is how to make the real seem believable. He says that one day he wished to turn the description of a dream into a story, but could not due to the excess of fantasy of the dream. But still he tells the dream in which in an unknown city a man was riding in a taxi, but this taxi never stopped which was supposed to stop, that is, in a hotel where a woman was waiting for him, and it kept rolling around the city, always facing an almost vertical viaduct. Imagine that taxi for the third time approaching this overpass. The man can see the woman in the distance leaving the hotel, coming to a bridge. So he opened the window. He was going to jump. The despair was less because he knew he could soon face a murderous height than because of the new image of the woman. He had seen her on the balustrade looking down. The rain couldn't wet her blurred face, and there was no problem with that. There was no other way to notice the complexity of her gaze over the abyss. So far as he couldn't have seen in the gaze that the photograph blurred. And whether he wanted to or not, ended up inventing the immense loneliness. My God, so immense. And in man the courage. So the dreamlike man threw himself from the viaduct and fell on a beach, where he was caught by a gigantic horse, and it takes him finally to the hotel. In this illustration by Carolina Vinha, a plastic Brazilian artist, we see the horse maybe returning by the edge of the sea. I end my line with this image, without telling what happens to the man, for I hope you will read the tale, just as I hope those minutes were pleasurable. Thank you.